I'm 33 years old and gearing up to tie the knot. During Fashion Week, I stood before the media, flashing a smile. All the attention was on Noah, the CEO of S Group, who was under the spotlight. Everyone knows I've been with him since I was 20, the only girlfriend he's ever publicly acknowledged. Sadly, Noah likes to call the shots, and no one can really keep him in check. His deep eyes stared at me with the same old indifference. I smiled, flaunted the ring on my finger, and warmly announced, "Yesterday, I said yes to Daniel's proposal. I hope everyone blesses us." Right after the Fashion Week event, my relationship with Daniel blew up online. It's no surprise, really. I'm a full decade older than him. Daniel's a hot young star and a renowned fashion designer. Pair that with the influence of the powerful guy behind S Group, and you've got some juicy gossip right there. Everyone knows I started with Noah when I was 20, and my current status is all thanks to his support. A few years back, as I was starting to make a name for myself in the industry, a fashion magazine did an exclusive interview. They hyped up my relationship with Noah to stir up some buzz. I still remember the headline: "Endless Love is Isabel's best brand." That same year, the fashion brand I launched began making waves, hitting the fashion scene with a bang. S Group supermarkets pushed it hard, and even their cinema and advertising divisions gave it the spotlight. Before Noah, Isabel, was just a waitress at a restaurant owned by his friend. Meeting him changed everything. He sent me to study fashion design and even got me into an MBA program. Step by step, I climbed to success. Now I run my own company, with a brand featured in top stores nationwide. The occasional high-end limited editions are the talk of the socialite circles. Naturally, I'm friends with all of them, and one of them too. It's clear I have solid connections in the circle. But it wasn't always like this. When Noah started sending me to school, I was already his. He bought me an apartment, gifted me jewelry, and took me to all sorts of parties and auctions. On the surface, people were polite out of fear of his power, but secretly, they had plenty of snarky remarks. They looked down on my background and me as a person. Everyone said Noah must have been charmed, choosing a lowly waitress over Miss Anna. Anna wasn't just a stunning and commanding star. She was also the daughter of a wealthy family. I remember when I was still learning fashion design, Noah took me to a party one night. He was up there mingling in the business scene, looking as indifferent as ever. Hungry, I went down to the buffet alone after asking for his permission. Anna gracefully walked in and accidentally spilled a glass of red wine on me. "Sorry," she said with a bright smile, not meaning it. "No problem," I replied, trying to keep the peace. But then she grabbed another glass from a wealthy girl nearby and poured it over my head. "Is it a problem now, Isabel?" she asked, her lips crimson and smiling boldly. The room burst into laughter. Even dressed in an expensive gown with flashy jewelry and polished etiquette, I couldn't escape my past. While they laughed, I didn't. I grabbed a glass of red wine from the table and quickly poured it over Anna's head. "It's still not a problem, Anna," I said sincerely. No one expected me to fight back, especially since they saw me as just Noah's temporary fling. They even had a secret bet on when Noah would get bored and dump me. Anna despised me because her family did business with S Group. At that time, Nick was still around and looking to marry her into their connections. Among the younger generation, Eric was married. The second was abroad for studies, and the third, Calvin, was known as a playboy. The rest were ignored. Only Noah, who grew up with their grandfather, got all the attention. Noah's father was Japanese, but later moved to Australia. When Noah was 4, his parents divorced, and his mother brought him back to the country. Nick had 3 sons, but only one daughter, Noah's mother. Shortly after returning, his mother died of cancer, and Nick raised Noah like a grandson. Nobody saw it coming. When Noah came back from studying abroad and used his shares to take over S Group, asserting the highest decision-making power with force, they realized the old man had long planned this. So, Noah was the natural pick for a marriage alliance. Anna didn't expect me to pour wine on her. She slapped me, and I slapped her back. We got into a fight, pulling hair and scratching faces, spilling fancy wine everywhere. Thankfully, no one came to help her, wary that I was Noah's woman. It wasn't until Noah showed up on the stairs that the chaos ceased. In the fight, Anna couldn't match me. Growing up tough without much guidance in a village made me resilient. So, though disheveled with just a scratch on my neck, I was fine. She, on the other hand, had messed up hair and several scratches on her face. Anna was helped up, shaking and tearfully accusing me, pointing her finger. I stood tall, chin up, defiantly staring at her. Noah appeared on the stairs, giving me a half smile as everyone around us reacted in mixed ways. Typically stone-faced, he seemed genuinely amused. He wasn't surprised because he knew how fierce I could be. From the moment I met him, it's always been like this. No matter who I am or where I am, I would never be the one to lose. That night we left the party. Inside the apartment, he used a cotton swab to clean the scratches on my neck. I pushed his hand away. No need, it doesn't hurt. His expression darkened bit by bit. Then he stood in front of me, slowly taking off his expensive watch and unbuttoning his shirt. The dim light stretched his shadow. He leaned down, pinned me, and held both my hands, completely losing his usual manners. When Noah kissed me, his moves were overwhelming. And I couldn't resist. The power imbalance between men and women is huge. It's unfair that fate left me at a disadvantage from birth. A man can easily hurt a woman if he wants to, and women, when faced with harm, often can only beg. Spare me, or at least be gentle. I'm a woman. I'm at a disadvantage, so I choose to obey. Noah was pretty happy with my obedience. He'd kiss my hair and cheeks, whispering, "What do you want?" At first, I was scared of being broke, so I told him I wanted money. He handed me a bank card. I kept withdrawing money from the ATM, clutching it to my chest with teary eyes as I walked back to the place Harry and I rented. It was snowing hard that day. Our place was a mess, stuff scattered everywhere. Oh, right, my boyfriend Harry owed a lot of money to someone in his business and ran off. He called me from the train station saying, "Come over, I'll take you with me." It was 2 a.m. I packed my things and rushed to the train station, but when I got there, the police had set up barricades everywhere. People said someone was attacked with knives outside the station, and a young guy was killed. There was a lot of blood, and the crowd whispered how horrific it was. The guy crawled on the ground, reaching for his phone. Then they chopped his hand off. In just a few minutes, he was a lifeless pile. I couldn't find Harry because I knew deep down he was dead. He owed a lot to a big boss and couldn't pay it back. The boss said he'd kill him. I wandered the streets in a daze and called Noah. "Noah, do you still want me?" In the middle of the night, Noah found me in his car and took me home. I clung to his shirt, trembling in his arms. I couldn't understand why I was so weak yet stubborn and proud enough to refuse help. He'd once offered me money if I left Harry and went with him. With that money, Harry wouldn't have died. But I was so foolish, so young, having nothing and thinking I knew what was right. I believed our love was pure and couldn't be tainted. Harry and I went through tough times together, poor but in love. I was sure we could get through it with our skills, like when we escaped that backward village. Harry said the boss was just bluffing. For tens of thousands, he wouldn't really kill him. I trusted that. After all, losing both money and life isn't a good deal. We worked hard together, like escaping that poor village, hoping for a better future. Harry even became a human punching bag at a fight club, saying it was quick money with just a few injuries. I juggled a restaurant job and another gig at a breakfast place, hustling day and night. We were small but doing our best. How could he just die? Why is money so hard to earn? In Noah's arms, I shook with fear. He wrapped me in a blanket, comforting me to sleep until dawn. In a low voice, he asked, "What do you want?" Of course, I wanted money, lots of it. But when I held the money in that rented place, realizing Harry would never come back, I broke down in tears. It was so cold, snow falling hard. He's gone, but I'm still here. Gotta look ahead, gotta keep moving. So when Noah asked me again what I wanted, I said, "I want to win." I couldn't keep losing, couldn't stay a failure. I was determined. Noah patted my head like a stray dog. He said, "From now on, you'll always win." True to his word, it took me 13 years to reinvent myself. There's no denying that without Noah, there wouldn't be the winner Isabel you see today. Over the past 13 years, he controlled me, mapped out my life. He always had that knack for effortlessly deciding others' fates, the mastermind behind it all. Noah was so above it all that everyone overlooked my efforts, thinking my success was all because of him. Even though my brand was unique and my designs won international awards, that famous fashion magazine wanted to interview me but still purposely linked me to him. Noah wasn't flashy in the media. He didn't like showing up in the news. But when that magazine highlighted my success, it praised my supposed romance with Nick and included a photo. The picture was taken when we attended a World Cup game, snapped accidentally. The handsome man sat with his hands crossed under his chin, focused on the game. The smiling woman leaned close to talk, eyes gentle. When the magazine came out, I thought he'd be pissed. But surprisingly, he just raised an eyebrow, read the article, and stayed calm. He rubbed the photo with his thumb, just like he would stroke my face. "You've already won," he said. He's used to being the one in control, so shrewd. I felt like a jester in front of him. Any small thought of mine was obvious and transparent. "I said I wanted money," I told him. He gave me money. "I said I wanted to win," I continued. He gave me both fame and fortune. He didn't even care about my background, bringing me to family gatherings and important events. I'm known as the only girlfriend he's officially acknowledged over the years. Because of this, that magazine and the public assumed it was only a matter of time before I married into a wealthy family. The magazine's feature was published with my permission, without my objection, testing his attitude. I had money and fame, but if I got greedy, what if I wanted more? At 27, I'd been with him for 7 straight years. People can be so forgetful. Looking back, my unsettled early life feels like it was ages ago. Men are naturally wired to chase things, but I've learned the big lesson of life: simplicity. I want stability. Yet, he made it clear he wouldn't marry me. "You've already won. I let you win because you have so much already. Don't overthink it." I guess I'm still not smart enough. Mr. Nick didn't push Noah to marry Anna because Noah's family never needed a business alliance to boost their power. He just thought Noah was old enough to settle down, and Anna was a decent match. His marriage needed to be well matched. Of course, he could refuse marriage. He had the freedom to choose me as a girlfriend. After all, I'm just a girlfriend, and he wouldn't marry me. People in high society see things so clearly. They are both the house and the winner. Their minds operate on a level above ours. Marriage is a lousy deal for them. It's easier to keep a woman you like, control her, tease her, and give her everything but marriage. It's more efficient that way. He made me somebody, showered me with resources, lifted me into the upper circles. Even Anna, who once clashed with me, later laughed, joked, and became friends with me. We're all over 30, mature enough to make peace with the world. If I had hopes of marrying Noah in the past, after turning 30, I gave up on that idea. With so many young, beautiful women, why would I, past my prime childbearing years, ask for more? Honestly, Noah treated me well. Over the years, he had other women occasionally, but I held on to the girlfriend title and all its perks. Those perks, of course, came at a price. I gave up over a decade of my youth and had a child that didn't make it. When I got pregnant at 29, Noah wanted me to have the baby. After all, he was 7 years older than me. A man at 36 should have a kid. That year, his grandfather died, leaving Noah 15% of S Group shares. Before that, Noah had already started acquiring scattered shares to gain full control of S Group. Once Nick was gone, no one could hold him back. S Group's building, a retail giant that went public in Hong Kong decades ago, stands tall in the CBD, a monument to his success at 36. He was busy dealing with business daily, yet he made time for every prenatal checkup. It seemed he cared about me and the baby, but still, he never mentioned marriage. I figured out the truth. I stopped longing for what couldn't be forced. So later, when I slipped down the stairs at 4 months, undergoing a cleaning surgery, he stood outside the hospital room, exhausted and cold, utterly disappointed. Inside, I rested, at peace. I knew even if I was over 30 and might never bear another child, he wouldn't abandon me. I was a success story he nurtured, a trophy in his life. Funny thing is, when we met, I was just an ant, struggling at society's bottom. He watched from above, a creator, amusedly rescuing an ant from the game board. Despite the fancy clothes, deep down, I was still an ant. Noah never truly respected me. He liked watching me fight like a wild little animal with sharp claws. That's why he was interested initially. He enjoyed taming me, but when 30-year-old me became gentle and kind, no longer having sharp teeth and claws, all we had left was faded time. A bore. People can't escape it. When the excitement fades, passion turns into dried up red. It's not just him. I got tired too. Losing the baby became a turning point for us. On the surface, I'm still his girlfriend. He hasn't broken up with me officially, but he hasn't sought me out in a while. I have a wide network. It's common knowledge he invests in a film for a pure actress who's now living in his Riverside condo. He pampers her, even starting a talent agency for her, and signs her exclusively. From 30 to 33, we've become more like friends. He could go months without contact, then suddenly check in with a casual call, asking what I'm up to. His voice always stays cool, carrying the depth and wisdom of a grown man. For my birthday, he never forgets to send flowers to the office, always a bouquet of white roses with a subtle fragrance. He also took me sailing and celebrated on a ferry. Yet, before cutting the cake, he got a call from the pure actress and left early when he heard she was sick in the hospital. Those little moves and tricks can't fool him. He lets her get away with it. I didn't care much, but everyone thought I would. His assistant, treading lightly, told me, "Isabel, don't get upset. She can't compare to you. Noah still values you the most." He didn't give her the title of girlfriend. I'm chill about it. Since he hasn't mentioned breaking things off with me, he clearly hasn't planned on naming anyone else. I'm in my 30s now, past the age of demanding things, and frankly, I'm a perfect cover. They'd say, "Look, Isabel's been with Noah for 10 years and is still just a girlfriend. Why would you expect more? You might be younger than Isabel, but you lack her flair." When she was 20 and with Noah, she had these amazing almond-shaped eyes and a peachy complexion, way more youthful than you are now. Time never seems to defeat a true beauty, and nowadays, Isabel is still really pretty. She's a well-known fashion designer, a brand founder, and most of the socialites are her friends. She owns a company with hundreds of employees under her wing. Yeah, I've got money, looks, and fame, and I can't figure out why I'm still clinging to Noah. I'm feeling this itch to break away from him. There's even a bit of thrill from that thought. Like in the middle of the night when I get drunk and start ripping up the clothes he left at my place, one by one. Screw you, Noah. Just get lost. You're pushing 40. Halfway to the grave, and you still want to control me. Just drop dead already. Am I acting out of spite? Love turns sour, a twisted desire going nuts in the shadows. Whatever the reason, it feels kind of liberating. I'm itching to break free from his control. While he was busy cozying up to some starlet, I wasn't sitting idle. I met this trending young actor named Daniel. He's 23 and has starred in a few hit TV shows. Daniel's really young. He's got this bold-looking face, sharp features, and a beam that'll light up a room. He's got that mischievous smile, but sweetly calls me sis. We met at a party. He said he loved my designs and wanted me to create something custom for his next award show. Custom? Now that sounds flattering and a bit suggestive. If Noah was ever paying attention, he'd notice those nights when this tall dude in a baseball cap would sneak into my apartment. He trusts me too much. Even at the Fashion Week show, he showed up to support me. I secretly wanted his facade to crack, to finally end things between us. Sitting in the audience, he watched me with those deep eyes. During interviews, I boldly announced, "At 33, I'm planning to get married." I showed off my ring, saying I accepted Daniel's proposal and hoped everyone would wish us well. I'd held back for Noah too long, living like a puppet under his reign. So at the show, I smiled, using this as my chance to break away. But I soon realized I messed up. The media attention shifted to him. His expression was so cold, so indifferent. Finally, he smiled faintly and said my name, Linda. His voice was gentle, like lingering tenderness, and in that split second, I woke up drenched in cold sweat. I forgot I couldn't defy Noah. His methods are sharper now than in his 20s. He controls his business empire and handles underhanded people mercilessly. What's my success even worth now? What does Daniel's budding career mean? Nothing stands before Noah's might. My seemingly grand career and company were never really free from his control. He's the master, and I'm just a piece on his board, not daring to resist. Just a flick of his finger could crush us beyond recovery. Yes, beyond recovery. After the fashion show's after party, a car was waiting outside for me. Noah sat in it with his usual nonchalant grace. He rolled down the window and flicked a cigarette. His sophisticated, distant face showed a faint, meaningful smile. "Linda, let's talk. Talk. I've always known he's just a well-dressed monster. Talk. I've always known he's just a well-dressed monster." 13 years of appearances were torn apart by my rebellion, and he finally dropped the act. He practically dragged me by the scruff into the apartment. With a slam, The door shut behind us. Noah pushed me against the wall, his voice casual as he spoke behind me, leaving me unable to see his face. Linda, haven't I been good to you? Why do you want to leave? Don't call me Linda. Shut up. Linda's gone. He had my neck pinned. It hurt, and I couldn't move. So I gritted my teeth and spat back at him. He hesitated, not angry, but instead just amused. Happy even, he said. There, that's more like it. Just like when I first met you, sharp-tongued and lively. That's the Linda I know. Noah really is a beast. He still has the strength he always did, easily pinning my arms down and tossing me onto the couch, tugging at my dress. I struggled like crazy, hair in disarray, screaming, "Get off me! Go die! Find someone else! Don't touch me, you jerk! Noah, you're despicable." I've never cursed him out like that. Didn't even dare to. I've always been a joke like this. Ever since I was a kid, Harry would say, "I'm like a spring. Push down a little more, and then a little more, until I can't be pushed anymore and rebound suddenly, risking everything." Now, I'm risking it all, tearing down all pretense with him. But he didn't get angry, just watched me with interest. He smiled a slow, deliberate smile and said, "Enough. How about marriage? I'll marry you. You pick the place, Bali or Howard Castle. Didn't I send her away right after the party? In fact, you just have to ask, and there won't be another woman by my side. See, Linda, we're perfect together. Even if you didn't want the child and deliberately got rid of him, I still can't let you go. I still want you by my side forever." I looked at him a bit stunned. He seemed pleased with my reaction. His hand pressed hard on my shoulder, causing it to ache. "Why are you so bad? Why so cruel? I pulled you from the gutter, cleaned the dirt from you, made you proper. Money I gave you, praise I let you have. So tell me, why treat me like this? What did I do wrong? Why do I deserve this? You wouldn't even bear my child." "I'm really pissed, Linda. Since when did you start acting in front of me, playing games with me?" I considered giving you a lesson, but I hesitated. You know I'm not soft-hearted. We've been together too long, and I did have feelings for you wanting a child of ours. But you killed him. Snapping back from the shock, I regained my composure and let out a laugh. His hand moved from my shoulder to my neck, and he chuckled too. "It's okay, Linda. Let's give each other one more chance. The last chance. I'll take the blame for what happened before. You want to get married? I can marry you. You don't have to have the baby yourself. There are plenty of ways, Noah. Aren't you tired of saying all these things?" I cut him off, the smile on my lips growing deeper. "It's too late. I've already lost interest in marrying you. I've got a thing for someone else, you know?" I didn't think I'd lose in this tug of war with Noah, but he was clearly more experienced. His eyes turned cold instantly, and he smirked at me, rubbing my cheek with his thumb, exerting pressure. "Linda, it's you who doesn't get it. It doesn't matter which ride you've been on. I decide the destination. I want you to get off clean. Understand?" His rubbing made my face hurt a bit. Although he sounded like he was smiling, I felt a chilling fear from it. "Noah, please let me go." "No way." He looked at me smiling, his gaze gentle. Just then, the apartment's doorbell rang, accompanied by Daniel's voice. "Sis, open the door." Noah let out a chuckle from his throat, and I turned pale. I felt like I was about to lose. The cost of losing would be Daniel becoming a pawn. He hadn't even caught on to the situation when the guards outside had him pinned. Noah rose from the couch, leisurely buttoning his shirt while I clutched his arm, my voice trembling. "Noah, it's my fault. It has nothing to do with him. Please let him go." He looked down at me, patting my face with a look of pity. "Don't be scared. I need to know who caught your eye, who gave you ideas you shouldn't have." Noah had never seen Daniel before. He was a successful capitalist, and his interest in stars was mostly about investments and sponsorships. Grace was the one who caught his eye while endorsing John's products. The moment the door opened, with my back to him, I covered my eyes, shaking almost all over. He thought I was crying, but he would never know that my quickly hidden gaze harbored a darkness unknown to him. I trembled uncontrollably because at this moment, I was the one in control. I'd been waiting for this day for so long. I was beyond excited. So when Noah turned back to me, incredulous, saying, "Linda, you still haven't let go of him." I laughed. Let go? Who'd let go of a companion you grew up with? A childhood sweetheart, a family member you've relied on for 13 years. I clearly remember his every smile, his swagger, his bravado. I remember when we first arrived in the city, unable to afford even the cheapest room, unable to eat. Harry would donate blood because the blood bank gave milk and bread. I drank the milk crying, saying the pure milk was so fishy, like I was drinking his blood. He'd pat my head saying, "Damn it, Linda, are you disgusting?" Later, we worked hard at any job we could find, endured every hardship. I worked as a waitress in a restaurant, and he hauled bricks and cement at a construction site. I was 18, he was 19. He got so tan he looked like charcoal, his white teeth showing when he smiled. He'd brag to me, "Linda, wait till your brother makes it big. I'll buy you a fur coat." Harry and I grew up together. We knew each other since we were just kids. He said he'd never leave me, would take me with him wherever he went. I believed him. But then he died. It's okay. Daniel's still here. They're so alike. I'm Isabel, a renowned fashion designer. People are like onions, always wrapping themselves in layers, but there are those who like to peel others to expose their flaws. I've been peeled before. In the end, it was just that I had worked as a waitress at a fancy restaurant, met Noah from John's, and caught his attention. Honestly, I hoped they'd keep digging, but for some reason, they seemed to lack the ability to unearth Harry. Harry and the place we grew up slowly rotting in my memory. A few years back, my studio released a fashion series named Decaying Wilderness. The industry called it my eeriest work, using wild imagination, exploiting black and bold colors to the extreme. Fragmented patterns, seemingly symbolizing death, said to be deeply unsettling. Because of this, the Wilderness series didn't sell well, only attracting a niche audience. During its promotion, the PR team asked about my inspiration. I sat at the head of the conference room saying, "I was born in a backward village. These years, I've often dreamt of being back there, walking endlessly on boundless grasslands." I walk and walk until I lie down in the grass, unwilling to move further. Then I gradually die. Decay. My eyes turn into dead fish eyes, my skin rots, and many bugs crawl all over me. The conference room fell silent. Eyes widened as they looked at me, and I continued, but I felt so at peace. The world seemed never to have been so quiet. This wasn't used because they said it was too dark, too horrifying. I didn't mind. When the room emptied, I stood by the window, gazing at the bustling city. Nobody cares about such decrepit places, a rundown southern village, backward, poor, ignorant, uncultured. In the 1990s, such places were plenty, and I just happened to be born there. A village favoring boys over girls, where if a family had too many daughters, they'd give some away at birth. The surrounding towns had only one school, and typically girls would drop out before middle school, work for a few years, and start talking about marriage by 17 or 18. That was most girls' fate. Everyone accepted it naturally. Nobody told us the meaning of life, taught us to fight back and find salvation. What was education? It was obeying your parents, living just for basic needs. Backward places also breed crime easily. It sounds surreal, but I won't hide it. I was born there. My uncle was a rapist and murderer. He'd select targets, stalk, escape, commit countless crimes, getting caught only after killing and dumping a body. I was 7 when he was captured. Eavesdropping one night, I heard my dad telling my mom, relieved, "The police have no evidence." It was raining heavily those days. As long as he can hold out, he won't be executed. Under the dim yellow light bulb, their faces were hard to see clearly. They didn't care about the truth, didn't care about the girl who got hurt. They just complained about the cops and worried about their family. And my uncle, he really held up. He got beaten so bad he almost died, but he didn't confess. So they couldn't charge him with murder. He went to jail when I was 7. When I was 17, he got out early for good behavior, unharmed. My aunt and cousin were waiting for him. They were all reunited again. People start by believing in justice, but after hearing my parents talk over and over, I somehow started to doubt my uncle was guilty. He screwed up, but he didn't deserve to die. The cops wanted to force a confession and accuse him of murder. My younger brother spat, "Stupid cops!" When I was hanging out at Harry's house, I told his sister Anna that my uncle didn't kill anyone, that he was innocent. Harry looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Are you nuts? Everyone knows he killed someone. It's a steal he didn't get shot. You should be shot too. Your uncle's a murderer, and you're covering for him." I was 11 that year. Harry was 12. Our families were neighbors, and we grew up together, but we didn't get along. We argued a lot. I usually went over to his house to see his sister Anna. Anna was 5 years older than me, left school early, and worked at the textile factory in town. She liked to wear pretty skirts and made nice hand bracelets, her two neat black braids, and when she laughed, she covered her mouth. I always wondered how Harry's grandpa, such a jolly old man with a face full of wrinkles and just a shepherd, had such decent-looking kids like Anna and Harry. I'd never seen their mom. Harry hadn't either. Heard she was a young woman trafficked from elsewhere. Harry's grandpa bought her, had Anna, then Harry, and then she left. When crimes happen around you and become a part of daily life, people's sense of justice gets all messed up. To the villagers, Harry's grandpa was the victim, and Harry's mom was a heartless woman for leaving them. This twisted place was where Harry and I grew up. There were more women like Harry's mom in the village, but they accepted it. After a while, no one thought of them as trafficked. It didn't matter as long as there was food. Women are supposed to marry and have kids, right? Who cares where or with whom? Just deal with it and move on. That was the environment I grew up in, the same one Anna lived in. I once asked Harry if he hated his mom, like the villagers said. Harry said he didn't hate her, but sometimes he wondered about her. He'd never seen her, not even in a photo. I should have asked Anna instead because Harry and I didn't get along. But Anna was kind. She'd tell him not to bully me. For example, when he said I should be shot, I cried. Anna comforted me and told Harry, "Grown-up stuff is none of her business. She's just a kid. Yell at her uncle, not her." Harry would often call me names, and we'd fight, but I still went to his house after. My little brother was a terror at home, always bossing me around. The TV always showed what he wanted, and if I tried to change it, I'd get slapped. To watch my cartoons, I went to Harry's house. With Anna around, I could watch freely. She'd even give me snacks. Without her, I'd have to deal with Harry trying to kick me out constantly. I wouldn't leave, ignoring him. Then he'd block the TV, annoyed. "Why is your skin so thick? Thicker than concrete, thicker than a wall. Aren't you embarrassed?" "Let me finish watching, and then I'll go," I said, getting anxious. He snorted and stood in front of the TV. "I'm not letting you watch. Who are you hanging out here all the time?" "Harry, you're like a brother, a real brother," I'd say. "Save it. Move. It's almost over." Nope, he did this, making me cry. And it was common. Still, after school, I'd go to his house again. Sometimes I'd even stay over, sharing a bed with Anna. That didn't happen often, as my parents worked late at the feed factory. When they were done with farming, all housework was on me, and I had to look after my brother since I'm a girl. It was my duty. I did chores at home, cooking and washing, but my second-grade brother wouldn't even pump water. Our relationship wasn't great because he'd always snitch on me, saying I made him work. My parents didn't like that and scolded me. I swallowed it all until one day, like Harry, I said, "Do it again, and I'll drown you." He choked and cried. When my parents got home, afraid of my glare, he didn't say a word. I stood my ground after that. He had to help with water. I didn't like my brother or Harry, but Harry was a better brother to Anna. When Anna worked late, he'd ride his bike to town to pick her up. After dinner, he'd do the dishes. Even if he didn't like me, he listened to his sister, and I wished I had a sibling like that. When I was 13, there was an outdoor movie in town. My parents were home, and after a ton of begging, they let me go with Anna. In the evening, Anna and I rode off. Harry told me to switch bikes, saying, "Don't exhaust my sister." Anna laughed and said, "She's not heavy, she's skinny." Even so, I switched bikes, sitting on Harry's. I warned him, "Don't try and dump me into the ditch." Harry snorted, calling me nuts. "You sick? Yeah, got meds for lunatics? Want some? Yes, give them to me. You are sick." Well, no meds. Stop calling me sick. The summer when I was 13, I can't remember what movie they played at the outdoor theater. All I remember is that there were lots of people, it was crowded, and it was lively. Anna wore a floral dress, bought some soda, and took Harry and me for pizza. I was so happy. The town was the farthest place I'd ever been, And the first time I tried pizza was when Linda brought it back from town. At first, I was scared to eat it, just holding it in my hand. Harry teased me. You better not eat it, there's poop in it. I was really startled, and Linda couldn't help but smack him. Harry, what nonsense are you talking about? That's disgusting. After I realized, I took a big bite and mumbled, I'd eat it even if there was poop. I love eating poop. None of your business. Harry was stunned for a second and then burst into laughter. Linda laughed too and gave me a little slap. You guys are too much. That's gross. Honestly, even though Harry often seemed annoyed with me, he was really loyal. When I started 7th grade, he was in 8th, and we went to the same school. Once a dropout troublemaker approached me at the school gate, saying he wanted to hang out and go to town. I was terrified, but Harry came over, pulled me behind him, and said, She's not going. She's coming home with me to do homework. As he dragged me away, my face was still white. Harry kept up his grumpy attitude, but at the gate he said, From now on, walk back with me after school. Both Harry and I did well in school. We were always at the top of the class. But my parents said the most they'd let me do was finish middle school. They believed girls only need to know a few words because they'll get married sooner or later. They thought spending all their hard-earned money on my brother was worth it. If he did well, he could continue studying. If not, he'd go to a technical school, and they would support him completely. My parents, like many others, played favorites, scolding and hitting me over my brother, causing me to feel wronged. I felt discontent and resentment, but seeing them work day and night, never stopping, would quickly let it go. They wore the same worn-out clothes year-round, and even in their not-so-old age, their hair was turning white. Whatever. It's normal to favor a brother. Every family is like this. We've been brainwashed since childhood, already subconsciously accepting these rules. The rule is boys are supposed to hold up the sky, and I'm supposed to willingly become my brother's stepping stone. I'm to work with my parents to support him, raising him high. Even after I'm married, I'm expected to be someone he can always rely on because he's the family's hope, the one to carry on the family name. Also, he's my backup when my in-laws look down on me. Damn. Even though I felt discontent and resentment back then, I had already accepted it in my mind. At 13, my brain was already this washed. The first time I wanted to rebel was after watching that outdoor movie. I stayed over at Harry's house with Linda. Linda knew I was a good student and showed me a letter. It was from her old middle school desk mate, Grace. Grace was the only girl near our village to get into college. Not only was she smart, but she also had good luck. Her parents gave her to her aunt who loved her and had money, so she kept attending school. After college, Grace wrote Linda a letter with a postcard of a city's riverside, high buildings lit up across the shore. Her description of college and plans for the future deeply moved us. Linda said, "Study hard. If you get into college, you can fly out and have a broad life like Grace." I said, "Can I? My parents only let me go to middle school." Linda thought for a moment and said, "If you rank in the top 3 in the county, the tuition fees are all waived. The school will persuade your parents to let you continue, and there's hope." Top 3 in the county is tough. I only ranked 4th in class. Don't get discouraged. Try hard now, and you'll have a chance. Easy to say, but as tough as climbing the sky. Harry's good at studies. You can ask him if you don't understand. He won't bother with me. He hates me. Says who? Last time we bought snacks at the market, Harry said to get the chicken-flavored ones because you like them. No way, you're lying. Really? He said. Repeat what he said then. He said get the poop-flavored ones. Someone likes eating poop. Anyway, that night, Linda and I couldn't sleep. In our minds, we were picturing the city from the postcard, the tall buildings with bright lights across the river. I wondered if I'd ever get to see it in my lifetime. Linda said, she definitely wouldn't get the chance. She'd been introduced to a young mechanic, a nice guy, and they were seeing each other. If nothing unexpected happened, she'd be married by next year. I had met the guy with Harry at the outdoor movie. He came to talk to Linda and said hi to us. He wore the worn clothes of a mechanic, had a gentle face, and seemed really shy. Life went on routinely, with a bit of madness thrown in. Linda dated her boyfriend during her off hours from work. The task of walking her home at night went to her boyfriend. That year flew by fast. As I moved to 8th grade, Harry started 9th. We studied diligently, even reciting books while walking. Linda's wedding date was set, and she was radiant, with a glow in her eyes when she smiled. But she also got busy, saying there was so much stuff to prepare. She didn't have a mom, only an uncle who was cheerful, but clueless, like a sheep herder. I took the money I had saved little by little, thought hard about it, and planned to buy Linda a floral skirt. It was a sweltering summer, and Linda loved wearing skirts in the heat. She looked great in them, with her black long hair and her way of giggling behind her hand. The river swelled after the summer storms. She had her wedding photos taken and brought them home. She looked stunning, like a movie star, dressed in white. I'd already arranged to get her skirt from the market and was ready to give it to her. But she didn't come back after working late the next day. She died. It was the night shift change at the textile mill, and her mechanic boyfriend couldn't take her home because he had something else to do. Harry didn't know he was at home studying, waiting for his sister to come in through the big front door. He waited all night, but she never came back. The next day, they found her body in the rapidly rising river. Back in the days when there were no cameras, no streetlights on the road, back to the village, the police said she accidentally fell in. Just like that, the case was closed. Just like that, Linda was cremated and buried. Then Harry disappeared for a while. I was a mess every day, not knowing where he went. I felt like a zombie, too scared to sleep alone at night, waking up crying in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat. My mom, rare to show kindness, cursed and grumbled, but stayed to sleep with me. A few months went by, and we heard there was a death in town. The nephew of the textile mill's boss. It was Harry who killed him. Rumor had it that the lazy good-for-nothing had a thing for Linda, but she ignored him. So he and his buddies blocked her on her way home, did what they wanted, then tossed her in the river. The truth could have come out all along. But in such a corrupt place, things often get buried easily. It wasn't until Harry found the murderer and stabbed him that the fog lifted from our eyes. What really gave me chills was that Linda's boyfriend knew about it. The night he was supposed to take her home, he stayed hidden after getting beaten and threatened by that bully. He didn't even show up after Linda's death. Later, his mom cried to anyone who would listen, saying her son was pitiful, mentally affected by the beating. That year, Harry was 15, still a minor. He stayed in juvie for 3 years and got out. By the time he got out, I had been out of school for 2 years, just turned 17. That guy who was supposed to be his brother-in-law went completely nuts after losing his mind. That year, I ran away with Harry because that spring in me had been compressed to the bottom. My parents worked at the feed mill and got to know John, who sold fertilizer. John's son, over 200 pounds and not quite right in the head, still hadn't found a wife. But John said his son had standards. Just any girl wasn't good enough for him. Still, John's family had money from selling fertilizer and feed in town. They even had a black car. He promised all his wealth would go to his son and future daughter-in-law. Once she was in the family, she'd be treated like their own daughter. My parents were interested. They called me over to the feed mill to meet the guy. I didn't know what was going on. When the fool said he liked me, my parents told me with a smile. They forced me to hang out with him, pamper him, marry him, brainwashing and persuasion. Again and again. Ever since Linda's death, I'd been living under a cloud, but that didn't mean I'd let them manipulate me. So at 17, I started fighting back, refusing to meet him, resisting the whole deal. I told them I'd rather die than marry him. I'd long since lost hope in my family. I always knew my parents were biased and didn't love me enough, and my brother was selfish. But I never imagined that to make me compromise, they brought John's foolish son to our house after agreeing on it. They locked both of us in a room. That day, I think I cried horribly, like a demon crawling out of hell. Have you ever had over 200 pounds of flesh pressed down on you? He wasn't right in the head, but had the strength of a wall. In that cramped space, I had nowhere to back up. That was when I realized just how terrifying the power imbalance between men and women was. I bit him hard. He screamed, hitting me until I blacked out. Fortunately, he didn't get what he wanted. Why? Because he couldn't get it up. Funny, right? My pants were gone, and that's why I escaped. When I came to, I looked at his pig-like face and snapped. I went berserk. Hitting, screaming, pulling up my pants, trashing the room. My parents still didn't open the door. It was Harry who heard the noise, ignoring Grandpa Yong trying to stop him. He came into my house and kicked the door down. I threw myself into his arms, my hair a mess, and watched my parents rush over to help that lump. They asked him, "Did it go in? Did it go in? Did it go in?" I stared at them in disbelief, clinging to Harry, laughing and crying like a maniac. 18-year-old Harry wiped my tears, just like he did with his sister Daisy back then. His hands and voice shook. His eyes were red with fury as he said, "Don't be afraid. We'll report this to the police and charge them." Fresh out of juvie, he knew the law now. But how do you report this? Will it work? The culprits were my own parents, and the accused couldn't get it up. What a joke. Ridiculous is an understatement. It's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Harry got kicked out by my parents as they yelled at him, calling him a killer and telling him to stay away from our home. I watched him standing stubbornly in the yard, looking at me. I saw my dad hit him and push him away. I went nuts, throwing myself at my dad's legs, screaming, "He's not the killer. Your brother's the killer. Your brother raped and murdered. He should be executed. You're covering for him. You should be executed too." My dad slapped me hard. That night, they locked me in a room. Through the crack in the door, I saw the light in their western room, stay on till late. What were they plotting this time? In this hellhole of a place, rapists, murderers, traffickers, lowlifes, madmen, fools. Everyone was a ghastly ghost. From a drawer, I pulled out a plastic bag and put it over my head, tying it tight. Just as I felt myself suffocating, the lock on the door was picked. It was Harry coming in over the wall. That night was so dark, I couldn't see his face clearly. But he yanked the plastic bag from my head and held me tight. He cried. I grew up with my first love, who I always argued and bickered with. He nervously kissed me and said, "I'll take you away. Would you like that? Come with me. Let's leave here and never look back." When he said that, I didn't tell him how much it meant to me. It was like being a fish dying from thirst, suddenly drenched by rain, almost unable to breathe. At 17, Harry and I ran away together. That night, he stood at his doorstep, glanced at the sheep pen, its light still on. Inside lived Old Man Young, who spent years guarding his sheep amid the unpleasant smell. I knew he wasn't asleep. Harry just glanced over, didn't say a word, and we left. Life's road is long, but I always remember him holding my hand tight. We ran for so long, thinking we broke free of destiny's chains, rushing toward a new life and freedom. We took a bus, then a train. We had no direction or destination. We just leaned on each other, my head on his shoulder. The city was bright and crowded, neon lights on the overpass, busy traffic. I wasn't sure if this place was the one on the postcard he once sent, but it had a river, and at night the high-rises across it shone brilliantly. It was hard to settle here. At first, Harry and I struggled. We lived under a bridge, picked up trash, searched everywhere for jobs, shamelessly asking if people were hiring. Things got worse after a scam cost us $200. For a while, we couldn't even afford food. When money was tight, Harry donated blood to get us by. I'd drink milk through tears, saying how it tastes like his blood. He'd pat my head saying, "You're gross." When I got my period, I couldn't even afford pads. I was pulling paper in a mall bathroom when a cleaning lady kicked me out. Harry went to the supermarket asking the owner for pads on credit, and they treated him like a pervert. I clutched my stomach in pain, laughing so hard I cried. He scolded me, blushing. "Come here, I'll rub it." We lived under the overpass, hugging for warmth. He'd warm his hands to put on my belly. I clung to his neck asking, "Harry, ever had fried chicken?" "No." "Do you want some?" "I do." "When I get money, I'll buy you so much you'll get sick of it." "I won't. I'll tie my mouth shut till I digest it all." We were adjusting to the city, fitting in. Even when there was no place for us, we felt hopeful. I learned to ask girls at counters, waitresses, or just pretty girls at bus stops for pads. They always helped unless they didn't have any themselves. We weren't down for long. I met a lady with curly hair who seemed rich while borrowing a pad. She straight up handed me a $100 bill from her purse. I told her, "You got it wrong." She lowered her sunglasses and gave me a look. Later, I got a job at a 5-star hotel her uncle owned. Linda was the first angel I met in the city. She just casually handed me a card and found me a job, then forgot about me, leaving me in the dust. I was the youngest server at the hotel. The manager said I shouldn't stay since I was under 18, but I looked okay with an oval face and big eyes. Harry and I made something of ourselves. I ended up a server at a big hotel, and he worked construction, hauling bricks. The hotel provided meals and housing, and he stayed in the workers' shed. We worked diligently for 6 months, saved some cash, and I eagerly got us an apartment. He wondered why spend money when we had a place. I said it was different. I wanted to be with him, see him every day. Harry smiled, his tanned face blushing, and we bought a kettle, basin, slippers, and bedding. The apartment had just one bed. We used to huddle under the bridge for warmth, so it wasn't new. But now on a bed, I'd snuggle him, only for his discomfort to push me away. Stay away. My heart sank. In my pajamas, I sat up. Harry, what's that supposed to mean? Did you find someone else at the site? No, it's all guys there. Only a cook who's a lady. Who would I find? He sat up flustered. Is the cook pretty? Isabel, are you crazy? You're avoiding it. Guilty, aren't you? I hit him with a pillow. He grabbed my hand, protesting, She's over 60. How's that pretty? We laughed and fought, then collapsed onto the bed, panting. I ordered, Hold me. He reached over and put an arm around me, holding me tighter. Fine, I'll squeeze you to death. He playfully rolled over, pinning me down, and pretended to choke me. I flushed red, hitting him. Let go, stay away. With money in hand, Harry took me for fried chicken and to the night market. A dress could be bargained down to $10 and look so nice. I bought a bunch of cheap clothes because I liked them. While I tried them on, Harry sat on a stool, grinning up at me, looking silly. He said they all looked great, urging me to buy each one. At work, I'd take leftovers home after my shift. Harry would wash up, and we'd feast like kings on big hotel scraps. Once a fishbone caught me, and he panicked, asking if I swallowed it. We'd wear shorts on our rooftop at night, cooling off in the breeze. It was comfortable, and I'd chatter about work. So many rich people, I said. Our hotel's third floor is like a palace. I get dizzy opening the doors, like I'm dreaming. How are they so rich? A meal costs thousands, a drink thousands more. I've been working downstairs for more than half a year before the manager finally let me work as a server on the third floor. They even gave me some special training for a while. When I serve, I'm super careful because rich people's stuff is crazy expensive. There was this one time a beautiful woman was wearing a fur coat that she said cost $8,800. She was sitting at the edge, and I was nervous even passing by her. Man, Harry, have you ever seen a fur coat for $8,800? My eyes almost popped out. Harry was fanning me with one of those fans with ads for fertility treatment on it, laughing. He said that when we're rich, he'd buy me that fur coat from the mall. We dreamed big about the future. Later, Harry quit working at the construction site. We had saved up a bit and heard selling DVDs was a good deal. So, he got a batch and set up a stand at the bridgehead each day. He sold both original and pirated versions for cheap, so lots of people bought them. We actually made some good money. But selling at the bridgehead with a lot of foot traffic was risky. As soon as the city officers showed up, it was game over. Harry got really good at running away. He teamed up with a kid who also sold DVDs there to watch out for each other. One would be at one end of the bridge and the other at the opposite. They reacted quickly. At any sign of trouble, they'd yell and roll up the cloth with all the DVDs to make a run for it. I was 19 that year. When I wasn't working at the restaurant, I often went to see Harry at the bridgehead. Every time I showed up, the kids selling DVDs with Harry would groan. I was better at business than both of them. I'd hide the DVDs under my coat and wander around pitching to people, Want a DVD? We got suspense, horror, action, all the new releases, super cheap. I'd say, buy one? How about two? I'll give you a deal. When I was there, Harry always sold out fast. He'd give me a thumbs up, knowing I was bluffing since I'd never watched any of them. Once we sold out, I'd grin and drag him to the market to buy groceries and cook. We moved to a new place. It had a bathroom and kitchen, shared though it was, and was still pretty run down. But Harry and I were happy with it. On my 19th birthday, I took a day off. So we decided to finish up early, then go for a dinner date. That afternoon, I went to see him at the bridge. It was still early, so I started my usual routine, stuffing DVDs under my coat and promoting them around. Harry told me not to wander too far because he wasn't feeling well and needed to use the bathroom, so I kept an eye on our stall while scanning the crowd. DVDs, anyone? Suspense, horror, action, originals, and knockoffs. Buy two, get a discount. I was displaying the DVDs from my coat when I noticed Noah standing there, eyebrows raised. Noah. Harry had set up his stall at a park located at the bridgehead that led to the bustling pedestrian street in the center of town. Noah was really tall, dressed in a shirt and slacks, and had his blazer slung over his arm. His wristwatch was blinging. Behind him, a few other guys in suits were watching me, looking confused. The first time I met Noah, I was 18, having just been transferred to the third floor of the restaurant to work as a server. In a lavish private room, Noah was having dinner with some of his friends, and the big boss of our restaurant was there too. The boss was in his 30s, but Noah seemed younger, though he was often toasted by him. The sister I shared duties with told me he was Noah from the S group. Even though he looked young, she said he was impressive and his grandfather was Nick. I had no idea who Nick was and hadn't heard of S group before. She named some large malls in the department building in the city, saying those belonged to S group. I thought, thank goodness things could be worse. At least I had seen one of those $8,800 fur coats they sold in their department stores. To think further, I had even borrowed sanitary pads from the women at their store counters before. That day, just like any other, I meticulously served up the dishes and stood beside her, ready to handle any orders that came our way. For some reason, I caught Noah checking me out a few times. After a few drinks went down, he leaned back and casually asked, "Do you have young girls working at your restaurant?" Noah seemed chill, but his eyes were definitely on me. Suddenly, everyone was staring my way. He looked kind of surprised and called me over, asking for my name and age. Technically, he was the top boss, but he didn't swing by often. I'd only just started on the third floor, so naturally, he didn't recognize me. I stood there and answered straight up, "I'm Isabel, I'm 18, I'm an adult." When I first kicked off, people always dug into my age. I was tall, but super skinny, and I had to tweak even the tiniest bit of the uniform to fit my waist. We were supposed to keep our hair tied up, wear headpieces, and rock light makeup. I wasn't really into makeup and couldn't afford it back then. The manager didn't make a big deal out of it since my skin was fair and my eyebrows were dark. They said I didn't need it since my skin was fair and my eyebrows were dark. I remembered. They also said my eyes sparkled like grapes and my skin looked fresh like spring onions. Even though I was 18, I looked way younger. I used to be nervous about spilling my age, but now I could finally stand tall and tell them, "I'm an adult now. I can work here." I was pretty serious, speaking with a heavy tone. He didn't say much more, but when I glanced at Noah, I saw him smiling at me. I thought that was our first meeting. It wasn't until much later that I found out from Noah he'd seen me before when I was working on the first floor. Back then, before I turned 18, I discovered that beverage suppliers were giving servers a fee for bottle caps, and this girl who worked in the same area as me was pocketing my share. That fee could add up to over $1,000 a month, which was a huge deal for me. When I called her out, she first denied it, then admitted it, but claimed she was broke. She promised to pay me back when she got paid, but kept stalling. Eventually, when I cornered her about my money, she started cursing me out. I had enough. During a shift change, when she let her guard down, I grabbed her hair and dragged her to the restroom on the first floor. I shoved her head into the sink, turned on the faucet, and with the sound of rushing water, I yelled, "You like pushing your luck, don't you? I've been too nice. Pay up? If you don't pay me back, I'll mess you up." I was the youngest waiter in the restaurant, with a baby face that looked pretty innocent. Normally, if someone bullied me, I'd let it slide. But when you push a spring too far, it snaps back. I was just too pissed, over $5,000. I might look young, but I'm strong. I always volunteered to move supplies in the kitchen because the chefs were cool and often gave me desserts to take home. I really didn't want to hit her. She was getting way too comfy disrespecting me, so I angrily shoved her head down again. She cried and promised to pay up by tomorrow. I slapped her and spat, "Now. I want it now. Not a penny less." Of course, this blew up and reached the manager. She cried and complained, but since she kept my bottle cap tips, we both got a lecture. In the end, I got my money back, and the whole drama was cleared up in my mind. I never guessed that Noah had chosen that day to have dinner at the restaurant. As he went upstairs, he passed by the lobby and swung by the restroom. He managed to overhear me in the middle of the event while just a wall away. When he came out, he saw me pulling that girl's hair and storming off to find the manager. That whole first impression must have been quite a sight. Maybe that's why he gave me a few extra glances later in the private room on the third floor, asking about my age. I thought our encounter at the bridge where I was selling DVDs was our second meeting. Turns out, for him, it was our third, especially since I handed him an action movie. Noah, Noah. When I realized, I tried to snatch it back, but he picked it up and looked at it closely. Right then, a kid on the other side of the bridge yelled, "Cops!" I was quick, turned, and ran towards our stall where Harry was. I grabbed the cloth, packed up the DVDs, threw it on my shoulder, and sprinted as I dashed off the bridge. Noah was still standing there. I didn't have time for him. From afar, I saw Harry and yelled, "Harry, Harry, cops are here, run!" Harry, quicker than a track star, reached me, grabbed the DVD bag, took my hand, and we bolted. The park was buzzing in the evening, its edges lit up with neon lights. The sunset and neon lights sparkled together, their glow shining on us. We ran until we were sweaty and then burst out laughing. On my 19th birthday, we didn't sell all the DVDs, but we went on a date as planned and had a feast, a fancy steak dinner costing $70 each. When we got home, I grumbled to Harry. It was expensive and gross, not worth it at all. Harry scoffed. You're the one who wanted to go. I hummed in disagreement, teased him a bit, and started sorting the DVDs we didn't sell. The one I didn't get back from Noah was an action movie, but I couldn't remember which. I told Harry, lucky him, he got it for free, and I think it's even a legit copy. Harry said, forget it, let it go. Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna ask him for it back. That night, while I was asleep, Harry slipped something onto my finger. I woke up quick and turned on the light. He gave me a silver ring. I looked at it from every angle, grinning. Caught you, didn't I? Lying about no birthday gift and giving me a ring? What are you up to, Harry? A bit annoyed, I busted him. He hugged my neck and said, call me big brother. No way, not gonna happen. He squinted his eyes and tickled me until I lost it, laughing with tears and begging, brother, brother. Harry grinned, pulling back. The next second, I pounced on him, showering his face with kisses. Honey? Harry's eyes lit up, cheeks flushed. I knew it. He might look mischievous, but deep down, he's so pure. Before I turned 18, we used to share a bed, huddled for warmth in the winter. The boldest thing he ever did was rub my belly when I had cramps, warming his hands to comfort me. I never told him, but years before eloping with him, I frequently had cramps at home too. They weren't unbearable, but when I first got my period and told my mom, she just tossed me cheap pads and said to use them sparingly, one a day. She told me to get water from the well and do laundry. My stomach hurt bad and my back ached, but she said I was faking. She didn't care. After that, cramps became routine, and no matter the season, I still had to do my chores. But after moving in with Harry, suddenly cramps became something I couldn't handle at all. I loved indulging in my whims, being dramatic. When the pain hit, I'd cry and hug his neck. He'd make ginger tea, let it cool, and watch me sip it down. He'd fill 2 hot water bottles, one for my back and one for my feet. Under the covers, he'd warm his hands and place them on my belly. Every few moments, he'd ask, is it better yet? Harry was really too good to me, always endlessly patient. When I got a fever at night, he'd run out for medicine, feed it to me, then stay up to wipe me down. Back then, he still worked construction during the day. In the morning, seeing his red eyes, I'd tell him to call in sick. He'd say, I'm fine. You just rest and tell me what you want to eat later. He's only a year older, but he takes care of me so well. With him, I feel safe and secure. Hugging his neck, my cheek pressed to his chin, tears flowed as I said, Harry, how come you're so good to me? Nobody's ever been this kind. Harry says I'm silly, saying relationships should be mutual. I treat him well, so of course he'd do the same. We're the closest people in the world. I told him, we'll always be together, never split. He said, sure, I'll never leave you. Wherever I go, I'll take you, like you're tied to my belt. After that, I wore the ring Harry gave me, smiling at work every day. The girl said I looked like I'd won $1 million lottery. I said, I feel happier than winning $1 million. One of them said, stop showing off. The boss is looking for you. Hurry down. I was like, who's looking for me? The big boss, Andrew? Why is he looking for me? I'd like to know too. When I saw Andrew waiting at the lobby, I was trying to think about what mistake I might have made. Even if I did mess up, it wasn't serious enough for him to find me personally. Nervously, I headed downstairs. When he saw me, he smiled and said, Come over here. He handed me an envelope and told me to take it to Building A to give to Noah at S Group. I said, Andrew, I'm still on the clock. He waved it off and said, You're off now. Just deliver it and then you can head home. While I hesitated, he added, Come on, I'd usually send someone else, but Noah said he has something to return to you. When did you meet him? I explained. I had pitched CDs to him by the bridge once. Andrew laughed hard. While changing clothes to head out, I was still thinking how Noah was a stand-up guy. A few CDs worth some 20 or 30 bucks, and he thought they were worth the trip. Downtown's business district is full of tall buildings. It was my first time at Building A, and I almost got lost. Finally reaching their company's front desk, the perfectly styled lady there made a couple of calls to confirm Noah had indeed asked for me. She then escorted me to the elevator. The place was huge, with people buzzing around, everyone looking so busy. These folks moved with such purpose, like they meant business. They were well-dressed, professional, talking in quick, fluent English I didn't get. The floor was spotless, the space spiraled upwards, lit with bright, almost dizzying fluorescent lights. It felt like the dizzy feeling of opening a banquet room door at a hotel. I glanced down at my cheap shoes, my cheap clothes, and then at the immaculate corporate outfit on that lovely lady, catching the light scent of her perfume. I felt relieved. Luckily, I was just here to drop off and pick something up, and then I'd be out. People have this sharp instinct, like animals, sensing when they don't belong. Places they shouldn't be. Places where they feel out of place, they incite fear. Fear comes from both the unknown and the known. I've replayed this scene in my mind countless times later. I see a girl from a small village, trembling, facing the world's first glimpse of a dream. This dream is solid, fragmented, like mirrors trapping her, reflecting blinding light from different angles, showing every poor inch of her. She dropped out of middle school, owning nothing but poverty. She thought she'd left the village, but standing in that dream, she realized she never really left. Her most impoverished part was her mind. 19-year-old Isabel was always brave, but knew life had no do-overs, and she never wanted to go backward. So she stayed determined, not wanting to look scared. I'm just here to deliver and pick up something. No big deal, she reassured herself. The nice lady at the reception handed me over to a tall woman, introducing herself as Kathy, Noah's assistant. She seemed in her 30s, with dark skin and deep brown eyes. Clearly mixed heritage, I couldn't help but peek at her a bit more, intrigued. She was friendly, smiling, taking me to the CEO's office. I expected to find Noah working seriously, but instead found him casually dressed, playing pool. His office was so big it had a break area and a lounge. Kathy left me there and quickly exited. I placed the envelope on a side table and said cautiously, Noah, I brought your stuff. He glanced casually and stayed silent, so I just stood there, watching him play pool. I don't get pool, never seen someone play it up close, but I knew he was good. Every hit sank the ball perfectly. I ended up clapping for him, quite sincerely. He looked up with a half smile, asking, Wanna try? I replied honestly, No thanks, I don't know how. You can learn, he said casually, moving the balls back on the table. Wanna learn? I'll teach you. No thanks, Noah. I was just here to deliver, and I need to grab my CDs. Hurriedly, I waved it off. He put down the cue stick, walked to his desk, and from a drawer, took out what I needed. Taking a quick peek as I took it, yeah, it was an adult movie. Thankfully untouched, still sellable. I slipped it back in my shoulder bag, looking up to find Noah watching me amusedly. He asked, You know what those are? Sure, I nodded. Seen them before? Nope. I shook my head honestly. My boyfriend says not to open them, 'cause then they can't be sold. Harry's exact words were more than that, he said. They're not worth watching, and you're too young to wait till I'm 20. I have to say, Harry is a pretty innocent guy. We've shared a bed for a year, and still, he hasn't done anything. I was really frustrated back then, climbing on him whenever I had the chance. He'd grip my wrists, gritting his teeth, saying, Settle down, you're too young, not even legal. I grumbled, What's your deal? Back home, girls get married and have kids at 17. Harry's expression turned serious. He patted my head and said, You know, that's not a good thing. They just don't have a choice. My spirits dropped instantly. I mumbled, Some seem pretty happy, though. That's because they've never seen the world outside. If they had the chance to see it, they wouldn't be content to stay trapped in a place like that, just getting married and having kids. I hugged Harry's waist, laying half on him, and fell silent. Yeah, no one's content living like that. Harry and I got lucky. We escaped. But not everyone can get out. Some springs get pressed down so much they just break. Some, when they're about to give in, have a weight lifted off briefly, just to be pressed down again repeatedly. And others, well, from birth, they're clamped down and stretched into just a wire. This topic is really heavy, you know? I don't like hearing Harry bring it up. It reminds me of a lot of unhappy, sad, and scary stuff. So Harry and I got along fine until after I turned 18. One day I pounced on him, whispered in his ear, "I'm really not a kid anymore. Check for yourself." His face turned beet red down to his ears, his hand on my waist. "All right, but I have no experience. Don't make fun of me." I said, "I don't either. Let's learn and explore together." Maybe we got too into exploring because when I suggested getting a DVD player to watch movies at home, he instantly refused. "What do you need to watch, little girl? Wait till you're 20. Eh, he said, "Just look at me. Am I not enough for you to watch?" I complained, "I didn't say I'd watch action movies, just regular ones." "No way. When I'm not home, you'll sneak to watch them." "I won't." "You will. You even told people at the DVD stall to secretly watch at home. I'm already an adult." "Just barely." "Wait 2 more years." "Just barely." "Wait 2 more years. Why?" I was not pleased. "Watching all that will only harm you." Harry looked a bit begrudging, holding his waist and scolding. And it could harm me too. I was heading back with the DVDs I got from Noah when his assistant, Kathy, came in with 2 freshly brewed cups of coffee. And there was a fruit platter and some desserts on the meeting table, looking really fresh. Noah took a sip of coffee and naturally led me to the meeting sofa, gesturing for me to sit. I didn't have the heart to refuse, thinking he might have something for me to tell Jack. But just as I sat, his phone rang, and he walked away to take the call. It was a long call, his voice cold and gradually impatient. I waited quite a bit, took a sip of the coffee Kathy brought, saying she'd added extra milk and sugar. She thought I wouldn't like it otherwise. I swear it was my first time drinking coffee. I knew it was bitter, but didn't expect it to be that bitter. So, as soon as it hit my mouth, I spat it out. Noah turned while on his call, seeing me fumbling for tissues in my bag. He walked over, still speaking on the phone, and suddenly leaned in to wipe my mouth before I could react. Both of us froze. He hung up and said, "Sorry, I have a bit of OCD." With a calm face, Noah continued. I quickly said, "It's okay, Noah. Can I go now? Have some fruit before you go? I had it specially prepared." I was confused about the specially prepared, but Noah already sat down and gestured the same for me. Not wanting to seem rude, I sat and started eating the fruit platter. First, I wanted to finish quickly so I could leave. Second, the fruits were really sweet and fragrant with some I'd never tried before. I was diligently eating until it was clean. Noah just sat there, silently watching me eat. He looked to be in a good mood, gently rubbing his thumb, eyes deep in thought. His gaze made me uneasy. As I frowned and was about to say I was done and could go, he spoke first leisurely. "Your boyfriend's name is Harry?" Mentioning Harry meant I couldn't just leave. Noah seemed quite interested in him, asking many questions. I was curious why he suddenly brought Harry up. Regardless of his reasons, soon I realized he looked down on him. When he heard Harry sold DVDs by the bridge, his lips curled into a slight sneer. Knowing that annoyed me, I told him, "My boyfriend is hardworking and ambitious. In my eyes, he's the best, the one I love most." "I don't know what you mean, Noah, but you don't have to look down on him or me. After all, we owe you nothing. We're not your employees." Surprised by my bluntness, Noah chuckled openly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to belittle you, but I truly don't think much of him." I frowned, glaring at him. "Linda, you're young, beautiful, resilient. You deserve a better future, not serving tables or selling DVDs by the bridge. You think your boyfriend is great, that true love conquers all, because you're young and see little. When you're short-sighted, you're like someone at the back of a theater. When the crowd laughs, so do you without seeing why. Years later, the truth hits that they laughed at the play, but you laughed at yourself." Noah looked at me lazily, speaking casually. "But you laughed at yourself." I furrowed my brows even more. "Noah, I'm not very educated, so what exactly are you trying to say? Spell it out for me." He shouldn't waste your time if he can't give you what you want. It's like letting an interesting cicada die in the summer, never getting to see snow. I think that's a pity. He adjusted his posture and smiled at me. I can give you a sum of money. Leave him and come to me. I can offer you a broader life. This really shocked me. I stood up immediately, incredulous. Are you saying you want to keep me? Don't think of it as something dirty. It's nurturing. His eyes were indifferent, and he glanced at me. This is a chance to change your fate. You'll sit front row at the show, becoming the star of your life, doing whatever you want, forging your path to success. You just need to give up a little garbage, and you're smart enough to know how to choose. Why me? No reason. Sometimes connections between people just need a glance. I want to give you a hand. Maybe it's just a spur-of-the-moment idea without much significance. How much are you offering to buy me out? I snapped out of my shock, laughing incredulously. Noah, so high and mighty. He had a subtle expression. 200,000, that's what you're worth right now. He's a businessman. Businessmen are used to valuing everything in terms of money. But I'm just an ordinary person. Like he said, I'm young and resilient. Even if Linda at 19 wants to be in a showdown in the dumps, who is he to judge me and Harry? I curved my lips into a malicious smile. Noah, Harry isn't junk in my life? I'd give up everything for him, even my life. Can you believe that? Noah furrowed his brows. I continued. Feel free to mock us. Laugh all you want. I'm all for true love. A crazy fool. Proud and happy about it. You should keep laughing at us because Harry and I have everything but money, while you have nothing but money. Never mess with a feisty young woman or try to teach her your so-called truths. She needs to find her own way and understanding in life. She's like a newborn calf, never regretting any step, even if she hits and bleeds along the way. Under Noah's slightly changed expression, I shot him a scornful smile and left. This talk about cicadas, missing the snow being a pity, is nonsense. Forcing a summer cicada to see snow is just pointless. After that, I didn't see Noah for half a year. Of course, I didn't tell Harry either. It was as if that little incident never happened, and everyone went on with their lives. He continued being the high and mighty CEO, and I was just a small waiter at a restaurant. Two paths that should remain parallel, extending along their trajectories. Until later that year, their group booked the entire restaurant for a grand annual gala. After half a year, I saw him again. Noah, surrounded by stars, always accompanied by many people. He was the same as always, sharply dressed, with a sharp gaze, noble yet distant. Their annual gala was both successful and lively, even featuring a few popular celebrities. We stood at the entrance of the banquet hall. As he passed by me, he was talking with a smiling female celebrity beside him, his gaze indifferent, not looking in my direction. I breathed a sigh of relief. When I gave him a piece of my mind in his office 6 months ago, it felt great, but I did worry for a while afterward. He's always friends with Jack, and I feared he might take revenge and cause trouble for me at work. But fortunately, he wasn't that type. In the latter part of the gala, something unexpected happened. When Noah took the stage to give a speech, a man in a suit stood up, slammed the table loudly, and shouted, emboldened by alcohol. His name is Calvin, technically Noah's cousin, Nick's third grandson, and a general manager at the S Group, also an heir. With a rebellious look, he pointed at Noah's nose. Who the hell are you? Why should we all listen to you? Earlier on stage, Noah announced some strategic shifts for the group in the coming year, which pissed off Calvin. Clearly, old grudges had been festering, causing this outburst in such a setting. I watched Noah on stage, unfazed, raising an eyebrow at him. He said nothing, just looked at him with a mocking smile. Eric, Calvin's older brother, stood up immediately, slapped him, and told him to get out of there. That slap sobered Calvin up. He stormed out in anger. After the scene, everyone knowingly resumed drinking jovially. I obviously didn't understand these family feuds, so I focused on doing my job, serving the guests. Soon, I had a task to handle. Kathy, whom I met briefly at the tower, approached me. She handed me a cup of sobering tea, saying Noah had drunk too much and was resting upstairs, and asked me to bring it to him. Kathy was busy, and I heard someone calling her. She patted my shoulder, said, "Please, Isabel," and then left. As a waiter, serving the guests was my job, So I followed her instructions and took the tea upstairs. That floor was quiet. As I entered, the lighting was dim. Noah lay on the couch, face up, eyes closed, as if sleeping. Shadows outlined his sharp features, and he lay motionless. I placed the tea on the table and whispered a reminder, Noah, the tea is here. He didn't respond, remaining in his face up, eyes closed posture. As I was about to leave quietly, a wild thought crossed my mind. What if he's dead? Every hair on my arm stood on end. I hesitated, heart racing, and moved forward, extending a finger to check if he was breathing. Just then, he opened his eyes and pulled me down onto the couch. I screamed, startled. By the time I regained my senses, he was on top of me, his face above mine, deep, sharp eyes full of mischief. I was gasping loudly from the scare, breaking the silence of the room, and he had the nerve to laugh. I struggled to sit up, furious and embarrassed, shouting, "What the heck are you doing? Get up!" Noah had a slight smell of alcohol on his breath. He looked at me, placing his hand on my head and tucking stray hair behind my ear. Then he touched my face, asking, "What do you want?" His hand was warm, his breath was warm, and even his voice had a gentle tone to it. I pushed him with all my might, scared and sweating, almost in tears. "I want you up!" "Get up?" My voice was angry and my eyes glared at him fiercely. He chuckled and playfully squeezed my neck. Then he got up and let go of me. I stood up quickly, stepping back a few paces from him, frantically fixing my dress and my tousled hair. He watched me with a smile, his eyes deep, voice slightly hoarse from drinking. "I'm sorry. I was impulsive before, and this time too. I shouldn't have said those things to you, questioning your concept of true love, but you have to admit you're young and naive, and I just want you to see the world for what it is." "What are you talking about?" I eyed him warily. "It is." "What are you talking about?" I eyed him warily. He said slowly, "You deserve a better life. I just want to offer you that chance. You can switch jobs after the new year. Go see Kathy. She'll arrange everything for you." "What's the catch?" "There's no such thing as a free lunch. Right, Noah?" Noah leaned back a bit, rubbing his forehead, sounding a bit tired. "What if I say there are no strings attached this time?" "Then let me make it clear. I won't accept any free lunch. I only take what's rightfully mine. Don't bother with your schemes." "Goodbye!" Or better yet, "Let's not meet again." I pinned my hair back up, gave him a cold look, and turned to leave. He called out, "Wait a second." I turned back, and he pulled out his phone from his suit pocket, dialing my number right in front of me. He looked at me. "Remember my phone number. I'm offering you $1,000,000 now. Think it over and call me anytime if you want." $1,000,000. I laughed it off and walked away. Back then, I was really young and headstrong. Even if he'd offered 10 million, I would have laughed it off. Money meant nothing to me at the time. And of course, I thought things were simpler than they were. In Noah's eyes, I was worth just $1 million. That was his final offer for the 19-year-old Isabel. A year later, I did end up with him. Things are unpredictable. Harry died. I clearly remember. He stopped setting up stalls at the bridge. He got along like brothers with the video store owner, asking if Harry wanted in on selling phone cards wholesale. The video store owner had a supplier buying at half price from a big boss, then selling them at a 10% discount. We pooled all our savings, made our first fortune under the video store owner's guidance. Then, Harry wanted to go solo, split from the partnership. He found a new place and teamed up with that big boss. Business was good since then. We made a lot, buying stock in bulk. When funds were short, we sometimes got goods on credit from the big boss. Harry was really hustling. He hired someone to watch the store and went out daily to make sales. A summer passed, and he got as tanned as he was when working construction. We made a lot of money during that time, and Harry said soon he'd take me shopping for mink coats. I scoffed, saying I didn't want that. Just $1,000 cashmere coat would do. Harry said, "No way we'd buy 10 coats." He picked me up and spun me around until I was dizzy. We were so happy, dreaming big. We'd save up, buy a house, have a real home, and make a life in the city. But it all came crashing down so fast. Almost overnight, the market got chaotic, and the cards we were buying at half price were being sold for a fifth of that. We weren't the only ones hit hard. The video store owner lost nearly 2 million and called Harry in tears. After clearing out the stock, Harry still owed the boss a 400,000 goods bill. That boss, who I never met, was rumored to have a shady past. His men were debt collectors, threatening to kill Harry if the debt wasn't paid. Harry got beaten up once. I was anxious not seeing him for days until he came back to our apartment, bruised and battered. I held him crying my eyes out. His face was swollen and he could barely open his eyes, yet he comforted me, saying, "Don't worry, I'd met the boss and arranged to pay in installments." He said, "There's nothing to fear, they were just scare tactics. They wouldn't actually take his life over a few 100,000. Honestly, I thought about going to Noah, but deep down, I didn't think we were defeated yet, not completely out of options. Harry said we could pay the money back slowly, and I believed him. I got a job at a breakfast shop, starting work at 4 a.m. I finished at the restaurant at 11 p.m., and when I got home, I usually only slept 4 hours. When I got too tired, I'd sometimes crash at the staff dorm. Harry felt awful, his eyes reddened, telling me not to work so hard and he'd figure out a way to pay it off. I said I was miserable, watching him get beaten up all the time, living like dogs. Harry cried, apologizing, suggesting we break up so he wouldn't drag me down. I cried too, saying no way. Even if it killed us, we'd get through it and things would get better. Harry, we'd be all right again. I wasn't going to let him go, so I worked like crazy, thinking about what I could do with the 2 free hours I had between the breakfast shop and restaurant shifts. It was tough. I couldn't find a suitable part-time job for those 2 hours. 2 weeks went by without me seeing Harry. I was ridiculously exhausted then, so I stayed in the dorm. That day, I missed him like crazy. I left an hour early to go see him. But what did I see? At 11 p.m., I opened the door to our rented place, and there he was, tangled with a girl, clothes all messed up. Not a dramatic scene, just her clinging to him, pushed up against the bed in that cramped space. I knew her. She lived next door and worked at a hair salon. Harry's face went from red to ghost white when he saw me. He pushed her away and came towards me, voice trembling. "It's not what you think." She claimed she lost her phone and asked me to call it. Then she just wouldn't leave. I looked at his panicked face. My mind was just a mess, so tired and jumbled. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart, struggling to breathe, the pain almost unbearable. The girl he pushed away stood awkwardly and said, "I'm sorry, thought you weren't coming back. I'll leave now." As she tried to sneak out past me, I grabbed her hair with all the fury of a storm. I hit her with every ounce of strength I had. She fought back, cursing. "We didn't even do anything. What's your problem?" Harry rushed over, holding me, telling her to get out. The room was left in chaos. Just me collapsed on the floor, bawling my eyes out, and Harry's eyes were so red. His hug was still warm, like he could always be my rock. He asked, "What's wrong? Don't scare me like this." I laughed after crying, then cried after laughing, asking, "Harry, if I hadn't come back, would you have slept with her?" "Believe me," he said, choking on his words. I felt so terrible, like my heart was being squeezed tighter and tighter, unable to breathe. "I don't know if I should trust you." I needed to think. I was so overwhelmed and stressed then. I really needed to think things through. Harry walked me back to the dorm. He was crying the whole way. When I went up, he crouched there, holding his eyes, sobbing. "Believe me, Isabel. Don't leave me, please." I didn't turn back. I said, I needed to think it over. My mind was such a mess. I spent a week calming down, thinking it all through. I didn't contact him, didn't answer his calls. He had such a huge place in my heart, too big for me to tolerate any betrayal, even just a fleeting thought. I didn't know what to do, but then, at 2 a.m., he called with a strange number. He said they'd changed their minds, wouldn't let me go. "I'm at the train station. Come, and I'll take you away." I didn't hesitate, quickly grabbing my bag, packing a few clothes, and rushed wildly to the train station. I thought at that moment, everything was clear to me. I trusted him, because he was Harry, my childhood buddy, the boy next door. When I was 17, he kicked down a door, took me to a loop. It was a deep connection, a true love. He wouldn't stray for another woman. He was so innocent, he'd blush if I called him hubby. I trusted him. I trusted him, trusted him, trusted him. But why did he have to die just like that? I felt like a lost dog, like a fish out of water, gasping and hurting so much I couldn't breathe. He was hacked to death. Why'd he die? Over money. We were so poor, really so poor. How was I so useless? All my life, 20 years, yet still this barren, owning nothing. Born a loser, I couldn't hold on to anything. Couldn't keep my Lucy, couldn't keep my Harry. My Harry, my lost past and youth. I've been with Noah 13 years now. In youth, I've been with Noah 13 years now. It's a long time. He taught me how to live better, climb the social ranks, and always win at life. I just had to shed a layer of skin, swap a layer of bones. Still needed Noah to send someone back to my and Harry's hometown to get my household book. I reunited with my parents and brother. Noah brought them to the city originally to surprise me. They hadn't changed much, but I had, my eyes cold. My parents' hair had gone white, and they looked at me, crying but too cautious to say much. My brother was slick and smooth, calling me sis, affectionately. I found it dull and told Noah to send them back. He did it his way, bought them a house back home, and got my brother a decent job. Took me a year or two to find out. My brother had become part of management at a big local mall. Of course, that mall was under the S Group. A slick talker, already married with kids. He'd come to headquarters to visit and learn, always bringing stuff my parents made for me. It was kind of funny. Once even brought a mom knit sweater. He said, sis, forgive mom and dad. After you left, they were worried sick. Besides, if it wasn't for that mess, you wouldn't have run away and met Noah. It's all fate. Finally, a few years back, he visited, got hosted at a hotel by one from the main company. This staff didn't know him, saw he was from a small place, looking clean and fresh, dragged him out drinking. After drinking too much, assaulted him in the room. He woke up halfway, went crazy, called me crying, hiding in the bathroom, terrified. Right then, Noah was next to me. It was early morning. I sat by the window, lighting a cigarette. On the phone, a man sobbing in misery, asking what to do. I chuckled and breezily asked, did he go all the way? My brother paused, bawled harder. I casually asked again, so, did he? He hung up. Noah came up behind me, took the cigarette from my hand. It was midnight and he was half asleep. Noah wrapped his arms around me from behind and rested his head on my neck. In moments like these, Noah had none of that high and mighty demeanor. He was relaxed, satisfied, and gentle. I lay in his arms, staring at the city lights outside the window. The neon lights flickered like a dream. See, isn't it great to have someone at your fingertips? Before I turned 30, I wanted to marry Noah. I tested the waters many times. You think I loved him? No, I just wanted to take him down. The winner he groomed wanted to be the master of the game. He once said he'd make me see the world clearly. As he wished, I saw through it. I knew the chaos in the phone card market that year, the throwaway sales, were all because of his casual remarks. Harry and I, we were ants living in this mundane world. To him, this world was just a game. He didn't even need to lift a finger, just a look, and countless minions would hold down the struggling ants. How did I find this out? In the third year of us being together, he was in a meeting, and I was reading a finance magazine on his office couch. Later, when I put the magazine on his desk, I accidentally saw an investment contract. He was investing in a boss, the same boss Harry owed $400,000 to. When Harry got in trouble back then and was arrested, that boss's subordinate willingly took the fall. All these layers and loops, a no-brainer could figure it all out. Later on, I got in touch with Kathy, who had left. Kathy moved back to the Philippines after leaving S Group. Initially, she wouldn't say a thing. I spent 3 years trying everything to get her to talk. She was terrified. She said, Miss Isabel, just let it go. I went abroad under the pretense of a fashion show, changed my destination at the airport, and looked for her myself. Kathy was in her 40s. She met me in secret and said Noah approached Harry back then. That young guy was stubborn, wouldn't budge. He owed that boss $400,000 and got beaten badly. Noah offered to cover it and give him an extra $1 million if he'd leave alone. Noah didn't intend for him to die initially. He was good at playing mind games, just needed to keep pressing. Knowing Harry couldn't withstand, Harry was cornered again and again, threatened, intimidated. He couldn't take it. He wanted to run away. The reason for his death was that I rushed out after getting his call. Yes, if I hadn't packed up and left with him, he wouldn't have died. When Noah stared out the window in the early hours, the sky was so overcast, it was a prelude to snow. He wondered why a girl would recklessly run out into such a cold night. It was laughable. True love. There was no such thing anymore. Ridiculous. When he thought of her dashing to the train station, disappearing among the crowd, it frustrated him. He recalled her selling CDs at the bridge. A shout of police. And she'd take off running. With a bag full of discs on her back, she'd pass him by, yelling excitedly, "Harry! Harry!" That 20-something boy named Harry, athletic-looking, rushed over, grabbed her hand, and led her forward. So young, their hands clutched so tightly, their smile so bright, her face all flushed, so innocent. Noah thought of himself, just 26, yet feeling so weathered and old. His life was the same as always, moving step by step toward being the heir of S Group, as his grandfather expected. He had everything and nothing. Parents divorced at 4, mother later passed, strict grandfather. He learned to be independent, with a clear mind and sharp thinking. He'd even dated while studying abroad, then broke up. People should be rational, clear-headed. Feelings should be about weighing gains and losses. So why were they laughing so heartily, as if having more than him? Why did she later say Harry wasn't a mistake in her life, that she'd give up everything for him, even her life? How dare she look at him coldly, sharp-tongued, sneering at his sincerity? And that guy, out of options yet refusing to let go. Damn him. Noah frowned as he slightly raised his head, watching the snow about to fall. Let it come quickly. Cover this vast land, hide all the ugliness and fake emotions. Let it come quickly. Illuminate the road ahead and let that cicada see clearly. If he wants, the cicada of summer can surely see the snow of winter. At 23, I doubted the truth about Harry's death. At 26, I confirmed it. Not too sad or panicked as I imagined. Suddenly, I remembered returning to our rented place and seeing him and that hairdresser in a mess. I was so heartbroken then. Insisted on going back to the dorm. Harry followed me all the way crying. When I went upstairs, he crouched on the ground, covering his eyes, sobbing. Isabel, believe me. Don't leave me. I beg you. What was he thinking then? Don't leave me. I beg you. What was he thinking then? A rich man ready to offer him $1 million to leave. That man was successful and liked Isabel. And him? A complete failure. An ant struggling at society's bottom. Yet for 21 years, only Isabel stood by him. He only had Isabel. So, Isabel, believe me. Don't leave me. I beg you. The story has ended now. Today, Isabel is 33. I met a man 10 years younger than me. His name is Daniel, and he reminds me of Harry with similar expressions and features. A stand-in? Don't be ridiculous. I'm in my 30s, far from believing in melodramatic love stories anymore. As Noah wished, I've long seen through life's tricks, living with clarity and understanding. How many people really look alike anyway? When I first met Daniel, he was just 14. He's from a small town, grew up poor, and lived with his grandma. Back then, I had some cash to spare, so I randomly sponsored a few kids from remote areas to go to school. No one knew about it, but he didn't care much. Later on, Daniel went to college in the city I was living in. By that time, I had already made a name for myself as a well-known fashion designer. When he called me sister, he had the brightest smile. I met him at a cafe, wearing sunglasses, keeping calm. In college, I started using my connections to help him break into the entertainment industry. I told him, your facial features aren't defined enough, you need a little tweak. He nodded and said, whatever matches your aesthetic, sis. That's how his eyebrows and eyes ended up resembling Harry's so much. There was never any pretense about being first loves. I was clear from the start, I was using him, but he didn't mind saying, whatever you want to do, sis, I'm up for it. He was a popular sensation, and we kept our relationship under wraps. Nobody knew about us. We met at a party. He said he liked my clothing designs and wanted me to tailor something for him for an upcoming awards show. And that's how another story began. Before I hit 30, I thought about marrying Noah, maybe even finding a way to get rid of him. Not just because he caused Harry's death, but because he treated me like a fool, like a pawn. Later, I realized that wasn't the right path and gave up on it. While his grandfather was alive, Noah would never marry me after his grandfather passed. I didn't want to marry him because I had a better plan. So I terminated his child. He was smart enough to guess I did it on purpose. I was smart enough to know he could tell. We didn't speak of it, but both were calculating our moves like real opponents we were. So what's my next step? Announce my engagement to Daniel during Fashion Week. Of course, I'd make it a big deal, loud enough to declare my break with Noah. So when things go south for him, I wouldn't be implicated. But Noah, he's ruthless. He wouldn't let me go just like that. No worries, seeing Daniel was the first blow. The second blow was coming. I climbed out onto the apartment balcony, half my body dangling. 7 floors up. Noah's face turned pale. He reached out and said, "Isabel, what are you doing? Get down." "Noah, let him go. Let Daniel leave, please. Leave, please. If you come down, we can talk about it. Really, really promise you'll let him go and never touch him." I leaned out further. "Isabel, I swear, come down." Noah furrowed his brow, signaling his guards to release Daniel. He carefully stepped closer and put his hand out again. "Tell me what you want. I'll agree to it." I turned to him, giving him a sad smile. "Noah, what am I worth now? I'm 33. Do you think I'm still worth $1 million?" At this, Noah's face went white, his hands shaking slightly. I burst out laughing like a lunatic, and in his gaze, I let myself fall. "Noah, I'd rather die than be free of you forever." News of Isabel's suicide jump made the papers the next day. Don't worry, there's no way I'd actually die. I'd studied the jump angle 1,000 times. Hung around on that balcony until someone called the cops. They finally set up an air mattress below, then I jumped. Even so, I got myself a bit banged up. I ended up in the hospital. Noah visited once, scruffy and looking rough. Pretended to be asleep. He knew I was faking it, but the whole jumping incident shook him. He didn't say anything, just touched my face and kissed my forehead before leaving. He didn't come back after that. I knew why it was all part of the bigger plan Mary and I had been cooking up for years. Time to put it into play. The first time I met Mary was at a family gathering 8 years ago. Her grandpa, Nick, was still alive back then, controlling the whole family. Mary's dad is Nick's eldest son, and she was his first child. Her mom was the first wife, but later died of depression after Mary's dad brought a mistress home. That mistress? Eric's and Calvin's mom. When I first saw Mary, I was surprised by how plain she was. For years older than Noah, she already had been married and divorced at 36, childless, unremarkable, hardly said a word. Nobody cared for her or took her seriously, but she held 7% of S Group's shares. I'd seen her a few more times after that, but we didn't get close until her grandpa passed away. The night before the funeral, the whole family was caught in a mess over the will and asset certification. At the funeral, the whole family was caught in a mess over the will and asset certification. Noah brought me with him, but he was too busy dealing with that pack of wolves to care about me. I zeroed in on Mary. At 40, bullied by family, she was still the spineless target. A firstborn with such an end, she was a coil ready to snap. I reached out, got close, and exploited the pain from her mother's death. Nobody wants to live in disgrace forever. Finally, she said she'd do anything if it meant her dad would be childless. I smiled at her. "You'll be the final winner of S Group." After Nick died, Noah became the biggest shareholder. He made a big decision, presented it at a shareholders meeting, restructuring part of S Group's assets. Smart move, taking the lead while having all shareholders bear the risk. This whole review thing took 2 years to get the green light. Next, a year-long asset liquidation was on the agenda. Timing it just right, it was time for things to go down. Noah was up there, all high and mighty. No matter how skilled he was, he couldn't possibly keep an eye on everyone below, especially Eric, who always listened to him, his beloved older brother. This brother was greedy. Over the course of 4 years, he secretly transferred assets into a private company where he had shares in the S Group. If it had been just the company's business, it might have been okay. But among those assets were state-owned shares. If it hadn't been for this financial audit, no one would have uncovered his secret. For years, Mary had been cozying up to her sister-in-law, Eric's wife. She nurtured her desires and greed, which were also Eric's, slowly but surely, with no one noticing. No one would have ever known. No one would ever find out. Who would have thought it'd all blow up suddenly? Mary and I had a goal: make Eric commit a crime to drag Noah down. Embezzling state assets as the head of the group? No way he's getting away clean. In this battle of tycoons, Mary and I almost lost at the start. Noah had too many tricks up his sleeve. He managed to cover everything up. I was in the hospital bed when I got Mary's call. She sighed deeply and said our plan failed. The S Group was destined to belong to Noah. He was too cunning, too ruthless. I looked distantly at the window and said in an inviting voice, "It'd be great if someone died now, forcing everything to the surface, no covering it up." Mary said nothing. I added, "This is the last chance to topple Noah. The winner claims the whole S Group." A few days later, I saw on TV that Eric was in the news for obstruction of audit and committed suicide out of fear. Then an investigation team stepped in. Eric's wife suddenly went public, claiming Eric didn't commit suicide but was murdered. Next to her stood the equally grief-stricken Mary, with reddened eyes, playing her part convincingly. High society drama, like swords clashing silently. Eric's wife accused Calvin of strangling his own brother. Turns out the police found it true. Calvin was arrested on the spot. Watching the press conference on TV, Mary apologized heartbreakingly and announced she'd temporarily manage the group's business. Her lips curled into a subtle smile. Mary was more formidable than I thought. The group was hers now. A small kindling had turned into an unstoppable blaze. Noah couldn't hide. Right now, he was probably at home, waiting to be arrested. I wondered how many years he'd be sentenced. Quietly, I lay in bed, eyes shut, humming a tune. I'd won. Without Noah around, I'm still the celebrated fashion designer Isabel. Exhausted, I decided to get some good rest. That night, I slept soundly and deeply. The next morning, I saw Daniel. He was sitting by my bed, smiling. "Good morning, brought you breakfast?" I asked. Did he get caught? He looked at me and shook his head. "He's dead." "Dead?" "Yeah, last night. Disappeared before the police got there." Daniel continued. "His father is abroad." Daniel continued. "His father is abroad. Supposedly they had everything arranged. Noah never planned to stay. He was gonna flee. And then, didn't make it to the boat. Got in a car accident on the way. Died on the spot. The driver was drunk and got arrested too." I didn't expect Noah to meet such an end. My mind wandered a bit. Daniel hesitated and said, "The accident happened on the road to the hospital." So what, was he planning to take me along when he fled? Or was he coming for a final goodbye? "It's not important. None of it is." I silently laughed. A spark of thought struck me, and I called Mary. "Was it you?" I asked. She replied, "Doesn't matter. If you were me, wouldn't you?" The next day I got discharged. The apartment was spotless, with no signs of the previous mess. When I opened the door, sunlight streamed through the window. A white curtain fluttered gently. Next to the couch, the ashtray was full of cigarette butts. There was a bouquet of slightly curled white roses, blooming perfectly. Their fragrance was subtle, pure, white, quiet. Only Noah would send me these flowers. I'd been with him for 13 years. He'd sent them for 13 years. White roses? So beautiful. Too bad they weren't very fresh anymore. At 35, during an interview at International Fashion Week, someone asked about my proudest work. I thought for a moment and still said that piece, Wild Decay. Everyone said it was my worst design. That year, after work wrapped up, I had the sudden thought to visit my old place. With no one coming along, no luggage, I headed straight to the airport. After buses and shuttles, I returned to where it all began, a very remote small town. I hired a car to visit the village. Old taxi drivers chuckled, saying, "Haven't been back in years, huh? The old store is long gone. Nearby villages were gone. Moved long ago. They got lucky with a big city businessman who fancied the place and built an eco park and horse field. That was 6 years ago. Oh, right, they built a big amusement park too, free of charge. That city's businessman is a good guy, boosting the whole town's economy. That city's businessman is a good guy, boosting the whole town's economy. Heard he's got bad luck, though. No kids. His wife got pregnant but lost it. They said when he built the eco park, he built the amusement park first. His wife, also from the South, said when their kids arrived, they'd bring them there. So the old store is gone. You still going? Yeah, of course. While in the car, I couldn't help but think, Noah was laughable. I didn't need to ask the driver the name of the big boss. I knew it was him. Noah used to always ask, Isabel, what do you want? At 27, I was successful, had everything, lacked nothing. I said, a big amusement park with a carousel and a Ferris wheel. He laughed back. Want to go to an amusement park after this busy spell? It was just something I'd said on a whim. He never took me. But now, I stood far away on the slope. The eco farmlands were still and quiet with lush grass. I saw the Ferris wheel in the distance. I bet the amusement park was a lively spot. Where there are kids, there's boundless hope. Regarding Noah, a dead man can't owe debt, and I never want to mention him again. The meadow stretched endlessly. 18 years since I left this place. 18 years ago, when Harry and I grew up here. As kids, we'd run barefoot across fields. I didn't know which direction it was now. I had to look. I traced the grass, walking all the way. Like a dream I had long ago. Walked until I could walk no more. Fields seemed deserted, just me. I saw Lucy on the back seat of a mechanic's bike, waving at me, moving farther down the road. She was joyfully laughing. Isabel, goodbye. And there was Harry standing ahead with hands in pockets, looking 17 again. Wind swept across the field, his gaze unchanged. Isabel, are you tired? Tired. Harry, I'm tired. The cicada that seen snow braved harsh winters and was back to where it started. Fields lay still. It lay in the grass, unmoving, breathing shallow, gradually fading away. Rotting. Covered by ants, eaten clean. Is it dead? No. Next year, lots and lots of summer cicadas will return. All things end like this. From the moment they rot, they're reborn anew.